I woke up to the sound of sirens. Not the usual morning roosters, not the rustling of leaves, not the gentle mooing of my cattle, but sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through my window, and for a split second, I thought I was dreaming. Then came the banging on my front door, loud and insistent, like they were about to bust down the place. Half-dressed, I swung the door open and found 2 police officers standing on my porch, hands on their belts, looking as serious as if they'd just caught a bank robber. "Mr. Walker?" one of them asked. "Yeah?" I replied, blinking against the early morning light. "We received a complaint that your bulls are aggressive and a danger to the community." The officer continued, scanning my property like he expected to see a hostage situation. I stared at him, then let out a sharp laugh. "Are you serious?" The other officer, younger and clearly uncomfortable, gave a little nod. "Yes, sir. The Homeowners Association filed an official complaint. Said your bulls have been charging at people and causing property damage." Now, that was funny. Because my bulls, Big Red and Tank, were about as aggressive as a couple of sleepy puppies unless provoked. And more importantly, I didn't even live under the HOA's jurisdiction. My farm sat right outside the gated community where the entitled ones lived. And yet, these people seemed to believe that they had the right to dictate what I did with my own land. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. "So let me get this straight. You guys got called out here because some HOA Karen decided she doesn't like seeing my farm from her overpriced backyard?" Either of them answered. But I knew the truth. "Look," I continued, crossing my arms. "I get that you gotta follow up on complaints, but this is ridiculous. My bulls stay on my land, behind my fence. They don't charge at anyone unless that someone is stupid enough to hop over the fence and start trouble. And unless you've got an actual reason to be here, I'd appreciate it if you let me get back to work." The younger cop gave an almost apologetic shrug, but the older one cleared his throat. "We just need to take a look around, make sure there are no safety violations." Oh, so that's how they wanted to play it. I stepped to the side and gestured towards my land. "Knock yourselves out." They walked past me, strolling towards the fence where Big Red stood, lazily chewing hay. The moment the cop stopped in front of him, he let out a deep, unimpressed snort and flicked his tail. The younger officer took a step back, clearly not a farm guy. The older one sighed. "Well, he doesn't look aggressive." I smirked. "Told you." After a few more pointless minutes of looking around and finding absolutely nothing, they finally admitted there was no reason to be there. As they left, I watched them drive back towards the HOA neighborhood, no doubt going to report back to their queen. And sure enough, just as I was about to head inside for coffee, a familiar, sharp voice called out, "Mr. Walker!" I turned to see her, Linda Marsh, the self-appointed dictator of the HOA, marching up my driveway in a floral blouse that probably cost more than a month's worth of my farm expenses. "Morning, Linda," I said with a forced smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "You know why I'm here," she snapped, stopping just a few feet away. "Your bulls are a menace. Your entire farm is an eyesore. The HOA has received numerous complaints, and we expect you to take action immediately." I took a deep breath, already feeling my patience wearing thin. "First of all, my farm is not under your HOA. You have no authority here. Second, my bulls have done nothing wrong. And third, if your numerous complaints are just you and your book club whining about seeing a real farm from your backyard, that's not my problem." Linda's face turned a shade of red that almost matched Big Red's coat. "You are ruining the aesthetic of our community. This is a luxury neighborhood. We do not want to see livestock every time we step outside." "Then don't look," I shot back, smiling sweetly. Her nostrils flared. "This isn't over, Mr. Walker. We will handle this the hard way if we must." "By sending the cops again?" I said, folding my arms. "Yeah, that worked out great for you." She huffed, turned on her heel, and stomped back towards her pristine little neighborhood, probably planning her next move. And sure enough, that night, the harassment started. It began small, passive-aggressive notes left on my fence, garbage mysteriously appearing near my driveway. Then, it escalated. Someone snuck onto my land and cut part of my fence, leaving an opening just wide enough for my cattle to escape if I hadn't caught it in time. That was the last straw. The next morning, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee and watching the HOA's cookie-cutter houses in the distance, thinking. Linda and her people wanted a fight? Fine. But they were about to learn that when you mess with a farmer, you don't just get some polite warning letter. You get farm-style justice. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a while. Rusty picked up after the first ring. Well, if it isn't city boy turned cowboy. What's up, Jake? You still good at causing a little harmless chaos? I asked. Rusty laughed. You know I am. What's the plan? I grinned. How do you feel about teaching an HOA a lesson they'll never forget? Silence for a beat. Then Rusty chuckled. Oh, hell yes. The game was on. Rusty arrived the next afternoon, pulling up in his battered old truck with a grin stretched across his sunburned face. He hopped out, wearing a cowboy hat that had seen better days, and clapped me on the shoulder like we were about to rob a bank. All right, Jake, tell me what we're working with, he said, surveying my land like a general inspecting a battlefield. I motioned towards the fence where my bulls, Big Red and Tank, stood lazily chewing on hay, blissfully unaware that they were about to become the stars of a show. The HOA has been trying to run me off my own land, and now they've escalated to sabotage. I need to send them a message they won't forget. Rusty let out a low whistle. Trespassing and property damage, huh? That's a whole new level of HOA nonsense. Linda and her crew think they own everything they can see. I muttered, shaking my head. They even called the cops on me for aggressive livestock. Rusty snorted. Big Red? The same bull that lets your dog sleep next to him? Yeah, that one. Rusty grinned, rubbing his hands together. All right, I'm in. What's the plan? I glanced at the pristine houses of the HOA neighborhood, their carefully curated lawns looking like something out of a magazine. They're planning another visit tomorrow, bringing some fake inspector to find violations. I say we give them a real country experience. Rusty's grin widened. Oh, this is gonna be fun. That night we prepared. I reinforced the fencing, ensuring Big Red and Tank had just the right amount of space to roam, if things got interesting. Rusty set up his phone on a hidden tripod, ready to capture whatever went down. We even made sure the bulls were well fed and relaxed, so they'd be just energetic enough when the time came. The next morning, right on schedule, Linda arrived at my property with 3 other HOA members and a man in an ill-fitting suit. The so-called inspector had a clipboard and an expression of pure arrogance, like he was here to shut down an illegal business. Linda, of course, was leading the charge. Mr. Walker, she said, giving me her best fake smile. This is an official property inspection. If we find violations, you'll be required to comply with HOA regulations immediately. I leaned against the fence, suppressing a smirk. Still not under your HOA, Linda. We'll see about that, she snapped, signaling her crew to move forward. The inspector cleared his throat, scanning my property like he had any idea what he was looking for. Yes, well, let's begin. We'll start with your fencing. Looks like it may not be up to community standards. Community standards? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. This is a farm, not a golf course. Linda ignored me and scribbled something on her clipboard. The group moved along the fence, making snide remarks about how unappealing my barn looked and how the smell of livestock was intrusive to homeowners. Then, they made their fatal mistake. Linda stepped a little too close to the inner gate, peering at Big Red like she was examining a museum exhibit. And these animals, they're a liability. We'll need them removed. That was my cue. I looked over at Rusty, who gave me the smallest nod. With a smooth motion, I unlatched the secondary gate, just enough to give my bulls some space. Big Red and Tank didn't charge immediately. No, they did something much better. Big Red let out a deep, slow snort, the kind that made the ground vibrate slightly. Tank, always the follower, did the same. The HOA group froze, their city instincts telling them something was very, very wrong. Linda swallowed. What are they doing? I gave a casual shrug. Stretching their legs. Then Rusty let out the smallest whistle, our signal. Big Red took off. Not a full charge, just a powerful trot, straight toward the fence where Linda and the others stood. Tank followed close behind. The reaction was instant and glorious. Linda shrieked, dropping her clipboard as she spun on her heel, trying to run in her high heels. The inspector let out a panic yelp and scrambled up a fence post like a terrified cat. One of the HOA members tripped over their own feet and landed face first in a pile of fresh cow dung. But the best part. Linda, in her desperation, tried to run across my yard, only to step directly into a muddy puddle and go sliding. She landed on her back with a wet splat, her floral blouse now a delightful shade of brown. Rusty was doubled over laughing. I had to bite my cheek to keep a straight face. "Call them off!" Linda screeched, flailing her arms as Big Red stopped a few feet away, calmly watching the chaos unfold. I sauntered forward, whistling again. Big Red and Tank slowed down, giving Linda a final huff of breath before turning away, utterly disinterested. Linda sat up, her hair dripping with mud, her face twisted in rage. You planned this!" I gave her my best innocent look. "Planned what?" "I told you not to trespass." The inspector, still clinging to the fence, managed to stammer. "This is harassment. You endangered us." I crossed my arms. "No, you trespassed. My bulls were just being bulls." Rusty held up his phone, grinning. "And don't worry, we got it all on video. Just in case y'all try to spin some false complaints." Linda's face turned a dangerous shade of red, but she was out of options. The HOA members helped each other up, covered in mud and cow dung, looking utterly humiliated. The inspector refused to climb down until I assured him the bulls were back in their pen. As they limped away, Linda turned one last time. "You're going to regret this, Walker. I will find a way to shut you down." I gave her a lazy salute. "Looking forward to it." Rusty clapped me on the back as they disappeared down the road. "Well, Jake, I think that went beautifully." I finally let out a full laugh, shaking my head. "Oh, it's not over yet. Linda doesn't know when to quit." Rusty smirked. "Then I guess we better be ready for round 2. And something told me it was going to be even better than the first. The video Rusty recorded spread faster than wildfire in a dry field. Within hours, it was making the rounds on social media, and within a day, it had gone viral. People from all over were watching Linda and her HOA lackeys running in terror, slipping in mud, and making complete fools of themselves while my bulls watched like they were the true kings of the land. The comments were ruthless. "This is the best thing I've seen all year. That bull has more patience than I do. City folk really thought they could outsmart a farmer. I'm dying." The best part? Someone turned Linda's muddy downfall into a slow-motion replay, complete with dramatic music. The HOA's attempt at intimidation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making me look bad, they had become the joke of the internet. But I knew Linda well enough to know she wouldn't take this humiliation lying down. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail, official HOA stationery, sealed and stamped like it was some kind of legal document. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. Rusty sat across from me at the kitchen table, munching on a sandwich as I ripped the envelope open. "Let me guess," he said through a mouthful of food. "They're threatening to sue." I scanned the letter and let out a low whistle. "Yup. Linda's claiming emotional distress, damage to property, and public defamation." I snorted. "She wants a public apology and financial compensation." Rusty nearly choked on his sandwich. "You gotta be kidding me. She trespassed on your land, harassed you, and now she's playing the victim? Classic Linda," I muttered, shaking my head. "But here's the best part. She's demanding I either remove all livestock from my property or pay a fine to the HOA for community disruption." Rusty burst into laughter. "How does she still not get it? You're not even in the HOA." I tossed the letter aside and leaned back in my chair. "It's not about logic for her. It's about control. She lost the last battle, and now she's desperate to win something. Rusty leaned forward, grinning. So what's the move, cowboy? You taking this to court? I smirked. I think it's time Linda gets a taste of her own medicine. The next day, I made some calls. First, to a lawyer friend who laughed so hard when he read the letter that he nearly dropped his coffee. He assured me that Linda's claims were nonsense, and that if she really wanted to take this to court, she'd be laughed out before the judge could even take his seat. That was exactly what I wanted. The next call was to a local news station. They had already seen the viral video and were more than happy to cover a follow-up story, especially now that Linda was threatening legal action over something she had caused. Within hours, reporters were swarming outside the HOA gates, asking residents what they thought about their president's behavior. The results were interesting. Turns out, not everyone in the HOA was thrilled with Linda's leadership. Some residents admitted they were tired of her constant power trips, of her treating the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Some even confessed that they liked having my farm nearby. It gave the area some character, some charm. A few even said they bought their houses because of the countryside view. Linda tried to control the damage, but it was too late. The news painted her exactly as she was, an entitled busybody who couldn't stand not getting her way. More and more people started turning against her, demanding she step down from her position. But the final nail in her coffin came when the HOA's own legal team looked at her lawsuit and refused to back her up. They didn't want to waste time or money on something so ridiculous. Without the HOA's financial support, Linda was forced to withdraw her case. But I wasn't done yet. Rusty and I came up with one last little twist, one that would make sure Linda never tried to pull another stunt like this again. I had a new sign made and installed right at the edge of my property, facing the HOA neighborhood. The letters were big, bold, and impossible to miss. Beware of bulls. Trespassers will be entertained. It didn't take long for people to notice, and soon, the sign was making the rounds on social media just like the video had. The HOA members, those who still had a sense of humor, loved it. The ones who didn't? Well, they stopped bothering me real fast. Linda, defeated and humiliated, finally disappeared from the neighborhood. Rumors spread that she had sold her house and moved to a different community, one where she could try her power games on a fresh batch of unsuspecting neighbors. But as far as I was concerned, she was out of my life for good. The HOA, now under new leadership, backed off completely. The new president even came by to apologize for the trouble and assured me that they had no interest in interfering with my farm. In fact, some residents even started stopping by to buy fresh eggs, milk, and produce. I went from being their problem to being their favorite local farmer. One afternoon, Rusty and I sat on my porch, watching Big Red and Tank grazing peacefully. Well, Rusty said, tipping his hat back, that was one hell of a show. I grinned. Sure was. Think she'll ever try anything like that again? He asked. I shook my head. Not a chance. Some people learn the hard way. And Linda? She learned real hard. Rusty chuckled. You know what the best part is? I raised an eyebrow. What's that? He pulled out his phone and played a clip of the slow-motion video of Linda falling into the mud, now set to dramatic opera music. I couldn't help it. I doubled over laughing, tears in my eyes. You kept it? I wheezed. Rusty grinned. Of course. You gotta keep the best memories. I shook my head, still laughing. Well, here's to never dealing with another HOA disaster again. Rusty raised his bottle in a toast. To farm justice. We clinked our drinks together, the sun setting over the rolling fields. The fight was over, and victory had never tasted sweeter.